have to share something that still sends chills down my spine. It's about something terrifying that happened at the office where I used to work. I resigned after this, no questions asked, even though I didn't have another job waiting for me. I had a family to support, but no paycheck was worth the kind of fear I felt after what went down. It didn't happen to me directly, but it involved a coworker, someone I was close to. For the sake of anonymity, let's call her Mia. The whole nightmare started one morning when I arrived at work and found the office doors unexpectedly locked. That was strange, something was off. I called a few colleagues, and they informed me that we had been instructed not to come in that day due to a criminal investigation. A criminal investigation? At our office? What on earth had happened? That was when I first heard the disturbing details. Mia had stayed late at the office one evening, a decision she often made when she had pressing tasks to finish. We all knew that sometimes work piled up and staying behind was necessary. That particular evening, it was just her, alone in the office, with the rest of us having left after wrapping up the usual Friday duties. We had said our goodbyes, wished each other a relaxing weekend, and Mia had cheerfully volunteered to stay behind, promising to finish some lingering tasks. It wasn't unusual for her to work overtime, and no one thought much of it when she told us she'd stay and head home afterward. But things took a dark turn when we returned to the office on Sunday. The building was locked. The lights were off, and the usual hum of activity had vanished. It was eerie, almost too quiet. As we stood outside, we couldn't help but notice the absence of Mia's car in the parking lot. We had expected to find her there, finishing up as she had promised. Instead, the office felt strangely vacant, and the door remained stubbornly locked. The unsettling silence only grew thicker when we realized she hadn't come in over the weekend at all. The following days were a blur of phone calls, worried messages, and the growing realization that something had gone terribly wrong. Mia had vanished without a trace. The mystery deepened when our manager informed us that the security footage from that Friday night had been reviewed. The footage showed Mia, as expected, working late, but something about her seemed off. In the video, she appeared tense, her shoulders drawn up, her eyes constantly flicking toward the door, even though the office was supposed to be empty. It was as though she could sense something or someone lurking nearby, even though there was no one around. Every time she looked over her shoulder, it was as if she were waiting for something to happen, for someone to step into her view. The footage showed her getting up from her desk, a strange urgency in her movements, as she walked toward the kitchen to make herself a cup of tea. Her steps were measured, but her eyes never stopped scanning the space around her. After a few minutes, she returned to her desk, but the unease in her posture never left. Something had shifted. Then, as she resumed her work, something even stranger occurred. Mia abruptly stopped typing, her body stiffening as she turned sharply to look behind her. Her gaze darted over her shoulder, and her hand instinctively went to her throat, as if she had just realized someone was standing there. The camera couldn't pick up any sound, but her body language was unmistakable. She was startled, her eyes wide with panic. In that moment, it was as if she had caught sight of something or someone, though the room remained empty. She paused for a long moment, almost as if waiting for something to happen. Her movements grew more cautious and deliberate, as if the air around her had thickened with an unseen presence. The change in her behavior was immediate and profound. It was no longer just a late night at the office. Something was wrong, something that left her feeling exposed and vulnerable, trapped in a situation that none of us could comprehend. The surveillance footage showed her pacing around the office, clearly on edge. She would get up frequently, leaving her desk to check different parts of the building. First, she went to the bathroom, then to the kitchen. After that, she walked toward one of the other offices. It was like she was searching for something or maybe someone. Hours passed, and the footage showed her returning to her desk. She closed her laptop and started gathering her things, but her body language gave her away. She was terrified. It was obvious that she wanted to leave, but she wasn't calm. She looked frantic, as if she was being chased by something only she could see. Mia made her way to the elevator, clutching her bag tightly. The footage showed her anxiously glancing left, right, and behind her as she waited for the elevator doors to open. And then, the first strange thing happened. The elevator, which should have been quick, it was a small office building, after all, took an unusually long time to arrive. There was no one else in the building, no reason for the delay. When the doors finally opened, she stepped in, clearly shaken. The elevator's security camera caught everything. As she stood inside, clutching her bag, the light for the 6th floor suddenly turned on by itself. Mia hadn't pressed any button, but the elevator began moving on its own. The footage showed her frozen in fear. She gripped her bag tighter, her knuckles white, and her eyes darted around the small, enclosed space. When the elevator reached the 6th floor, the doors opened. But Mia didn't step out. And then it happened, the terrifying moment that no one could explain. The elevator camera had audio recording, and the manager later shared what it captured. Mia suddenly let out a piercing scream, one so loud and filled with terror that it sent chills down everyone's spine. It was as if she had seen death itself standing before her. She was still holding her cup of tea, clutching it so tightly that it hadn't spilled, but in the blink of an eye, the camera cut out. When it came back online seconds later, the elevator was empty. The cup of tea lay shattered on the floor, and Mia was gone. For 2 days, no one knew what had happened to her. She was reported missing by her family, who said the last place she was seen was at work on Friday night. That's why the office was closed when I showed up that Sunday. Mia's disappearance had triggered a criminal investigation. The office stayed closed for 2 weeks. When we finally returned, no one was the same. Something had changed. The office no longer felt safe, especially at night. Employees began refusing to work night shifts altogether. Those who tried would hear strange noises. Sometimes it was the sound of footsteps. Other times it felt like someone else was in the room, though they were alone. Elevators would malfunction, doors refusing to open, or the elevator stalling for no reason. It was always worse at night. The scariest incident happened one morning when we arrived to find the office in complete disarray. Our desks were overturned. Papers were scattered everywhere, covered in a foul-smelling liquid. The smell was so awful that it made some of us gag. To this day, no one knows what the substance was or how it got there. From that point on, no one dared to work night shifts, and the company eventually canceled them altogether. Whatever happened to Mia that night, it left a permanent mark not just on the office, but on all of us who worked there. Over time, the situation at the company only got worse. One by one, employees started resigning. The eerie events and the sense of unease made it impossible for anyone to feel safe. The resignations piled up so quickly that the company had no choice but to relocate. They decided to move to an entirely new building, leaving behind the one where it all happened. And honestly, it wasn't surprising. Minus 90% of what went on in that place just wasn't natural. To this day, we still don't know what happened to our friend Mia. She vanished under such mysterious circumstances, and no one could explain why she was the one targeted. I can't stop thinking about it. What if I had been the one working that night? Could it have been me who vanished instead of Mia? That thought lingers, tormenting me with every passing day. It's like a constant nightmare, seeing myself in her shoes, disappearing without a trace, and leaving no explanation behind. And that's where Mia's story ends. It's a chilling tale, one filled with unanswered questions that still haunt me. I can only hope that wherever she is, she's safe. I wish I could believe it was something simple, but deep down, I know the truth is likely much darker. And the moral of the story is, trust your instincts and never ignore unsettling signs, especially when you're alone. Staying vigilant and taking precautions can mean the difference between safety and danger in unexpected situations. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, and share the video with others. See you in the next video.